Welcome, beautiful humans, to this episode of the podcast. Today, I have a very, very special guest, my soul sister, Reggie Riverbear. She is a beautiful song creator, an imaginative storyteller, and she has the voice of an angel. She is also an epic space holder who I met in Bali at a pivotal time in my life. And I am so happy to share her wisdom and her energy with you guys here today. Welcome, Reggie.
Thank you. That's a nice introduction.
It's all very
Thank
true
you.
and so much more. Ah,
Thanks for the
soul
invitation
sister.
for this conversation.
Of course, of course. You have so much to share with the world, and the more people that can hear it, I think the better. You just have this great welcoming energy that anybody feels safe to be around you. I think I can only, I guess, speak from my experience, but you helped me push into a lot of my edges,
Mm.
um, with being seen and being vulnerable. Specifically, I remember doing a song circle with you, and I was so scared
Yeah.
and so nervous, but you have this magical way of holding space that everybody feels comfortable to be themselves, to let their guard down, to show their true essence.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, there's, I think just from where I come from with everything is like, I feel like the more vulnerable we can all be with each other, the more real we get and the more beauty has space to like come to the forefront. So that starts with me. Um, and I love that. I love that you receive it in that way because that's a huge intention of how I want to be, and how I feel around people is that like wanting to really connect with people, and that can really only happen when we're all comfortable and like have our guards down.
Yes. And that's what this podcast is all about, is people sharing their truth
Mm-hmm.
so we can all connect and go deeper and become the next best version of ourselves. Yeah.
I love
So,
it.
what do you want to talk about today, Reggie? I know we could talk about like a million different things and all
Yeah.
magic, but what's on your heart today?
I did an interview with someone 2 days ago, and she asked me, "What are some of the tools that you use to like get into your creativity?" And when she asked me that question, it just illuminated this thing that I'd been feeling and hadn't really been able, or perhaps even a little bit scared to put into words, which is um, a recurring theme about tools are epic and necessary, but more than gathering tools is for me very much become like, how can we have a lifestyle and like in all of our little moments in between using the tools that cultivate a space for living, that those tools, we don't even have to call them tools anymore because they're just what we are at all times. So I feel this, just this powerful transition maybe in my own experience, but also yeah, what's coming through to like share on a through my work and just through these conversations is that thing, right? That it's all the little moments in between the big moments that actually write the story and that actually make your experience once we hit those peak moments because of how we've prepared in between or how much we've like actually practiced everything that we talk about and have integrated all those tools. So I think that's something to explore and something to just have, maybe have a conversation about how that feels for you. And yeah, does that make sense as a topic?
Yeah, I think that that makes a lot of sense. The more we put something into practice, the more it becomes ingrained in our being and
Right,
then becomes a way of being.
right, yeah.
How
Because
have you, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I just feel like there's um, there's such a blessed time where we're in, where there's so much accessibility to so many tools, like yoga and breath work and healthy food. And there's just a kind of a popularity around that and an accessibility that goes along with that, which is incredible. And I feel like an important transition that I'm not always witnessing yet is like the realness of that. Like, how do you really become that? How do you not just practice yoga, but how do you become the yoga? How do you not just eat what you're told to eat, but how can you bring that healthy eating into the next level of, can you actually be in full communication with your body at every moment? Like, can you listen really deeply? Or when we're confronted with big emotional outbursts, what have you done all those moments before that to clean your heart and to, to be in integrity in every moment that just creates a real authentic being of a higher quality that we're moving into. And for me, I think it's an ever ongoing journey for sure. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I don't want to say I'm strict with myself, but I keep myself in check as much as I can. Like, I have a little tune in with my heart every night before I go to bed. Just take a moment when I close my eyes, not in any specific way, but just a moment of presence and like a small 1 minute reflection, and just see where I can tweak and where I can upgrade and where I can clean up some of my choices, some of my word choices, some of my reactions, and just try to like just be fully aware. I guess that's really what it comes down to, because with that awareness, then every moment becomes a choice. And then what choices you have. You can go with old habits that have created certain lifestyle and certain patterns, or you can try something new that you've felt the frequency of, that you felt the magnetic pull, and the benefits and the beauty that come with that, and move yourself gently but persistently in that direction in every moment of the day.
Yes, yes. And having that awareness is the first step, because we have all this programming and this way of being that served us at one point. Mm-hmm. And then we get to come into the observer and we get to see, does this actually still serve us? Is it moving us in the direction of the highest in the way we want to be in the future? Or is it keeping us kind of stuck? And so having that awareness to even realize and be able to take pause is key. And that's like the first step, right? And then you get that pause, and then you can react or respond.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the things that I had a really fun visual a few years ago, and it's been coming back to me, was kind of seeing my human Reggie with all of her things and all of her programming and all of her, family lineage and all of this stuff, kind of as a pet to my higher self. And a pet in the sense that, when I think about if I have a dog or a cat, sometimes they're going to do something stupid, but you're going to love them and you're going to be patient with them and you're going to be understanding. And sometimes like you give them a little like, hey, don't do that. But it's always coming from a place of love. At least I hope it would. So that is kind of the relationship that I've transferred onto my higher being, that is in integrity at all moments. And then my human Reggie embodiment that's going to mess up all the time in the smallest ways and sometimes in the biggest ways, but just to always kind of bring myself back to that relationship of just being patient and loving when I am in those moments of dissonance. And yeah, and just to be as zoomed out as possible, like not get so stuck in the story of that, and just sit on the throne with my higher self and like try to operate from that space.
Mm-hmm. I that's a beautiful way to look at it. I personally look at it as, how would I talk to my inner child, my little Nicole? Like,
Right.
how do I be gentle with her? Because
Yeah.
it's so easy to be hard on ourselves when we're our own worst critics. But when we can reframe it, then we do have that, like you said, that zoomed out view of what it is, and we're out of like the emotion of the moment. How do you how do you do that? How do you allow yourself, like, what tools do you have to zoom out and not be so um I don't know what the word is here.
Zoomed in.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we'll say zoomed in. You know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Um, well, I think that comes back to the same thing, right? It's a practice of just constantly, I think maybe initially very intentionally creating those spaces through meditation, through journaling, like all these different practices that we can do that start to bring awareness to the difference, even in experience. Like, okay, what does it feel like when I'm fully enthralled in my emotional being? What does it feel like when I'm fully in my observer looking at? And I think the first time that I experienced it on like a game changer breakthrough epiphany level was when I did my first Vipassana retreat. And it was a 10-day retreat. And the first 3 days were so hard for me. And I just
Mm.
felt like my mind was exploding. Like you're sitting, what is it, like 12 hours a day or something in meditation.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit? Because I don't think all of the listeners are going to know what a Vipassana is.
Yeah,
Can you
for
explain?
sure.
Thank you.
So Vipassana, I think actually you pronounce it Vipassana, but I'm going to say Vipassana because I'm not completely sure. Is a meditation technique from India, and a very basic way to explain it is you practice becoming the observer. So they have a certain technique where you scan the body with your mind, and from that constant scanning, you start to move your energies and you start to see, okay, I am not anger, but I see anger, I feel anger, I'm experiencing anger, but it's not my true core. So they have developed a technique that's very much about that process. And so they've created certain containers. The most well-known one, I think, would be 10 days. You can do a weekend as well, but I think the 10-day is generally like the main chunk of the practice. And the first 3 days, you just do anapana meditation, which is just focusing on the breath. And then after the third day, on the fourth day, you start the actual Vipassana training. And so they explain it to you that you're going to scan your whole body, you're going to go down, you're going to go back up. And I don't know how it works, but what happened for me is, and what I was also witnessing around me was that once that practice clicked in, I think I've been such an incredibly emotional, sensitive, highly sensitive being my whole life that I had trouble like disappearing into the ocean of my emotions. Like it would just come on so strong and kind of shut me down. And when I was in that meditation practice, and as soon as we started doing the scanning, something viscerally changed in my being where for the first time I could actually see my emotions and see my human reactionary chain of events as a separate entity from my core, from my being, from my actual like authentic self. And then we had another 6 days of doing that practice. So in that 6 days of doing, and you start at like 5 in the morning and you end at 10 at night. And there's
And can we just add in that
yeah.
this is silent? You're silent the whole
Yes,
time.
there's no
Big part.
talking, no eye contact. So you're fully in your own experience. You're not allowed, I'm going to say that in parentheses, but you're not allowed to do yoga or journaling. Just fully focus on the practice to see what that brings you before you start integrating all your other tools. And so it creates like almost like a blank slate for you to just be with yourself and with your mind and with your breath. And I think that's an incredibly powerful position to place yourself in, because you have no escape. It's like you have to look at yourself.
You're faced with it.
Right. And it's a safe place because you are in a container where that's the intention. And so if you have a mental breakdown, there's somebody there who can guide you through it. But the practice is so well thought out and built up to support just this process of awakening and becoming aware. So for me, doing that was a huge kickstarter of really having an experience more than just the concept of like, okay, yes, I'm not my emotions. But I think that was the first time that I really felt it. So that was 7 years ago now. And so it's just been a continual coming back to that as much as I can. And of course I slip and slide, but you know, as we walk every day, you get so many little moments to practice.
Constantly. Yeah, constantly.
Yeah.
So that was 7 years ago, and that was the first time you kind of were able to zoom out, as we said, and take a step back and be the observer.
Yeah.
How have you integrated that in the past 7 years? How has that kind of shown up in those tiny little moments?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I work with really strongly is prayer, and just in the sense that I just like to set certain aspirations for myself, like, okay, let me be aware of this, like help me to be aware of this. And so that, I think that prayer from that moment on has then taken shape in so many, either people coming to like point something out to me when I was in a process or in a habit that I couldn't see, besides from all just the little moments of just trying my best initially to just, okay, what are actually my habits? What are my reactions? Like, where are my trigger points? Like, kind of initially maybe being a little bit analytical and just kind of going into my personality and into my being and looking at my family and just kind of pulling everything apart to see like what pieces am I actually made of here? Like, what makes this little being tick, and where does she get off kilter? And so once I kind of had a map of things that I was already aware of, that I could be aware of in the moments, then it became fairly easy over time to recognize one of those feelings would come up. And then when I recognize it, then I have a choice to like, okay, pause. This is not necessary anymore to respond in this way. So what can I do? And for me, it was very much about taking a lot of space. Like I took a lot of space for myself, a lot of time for myself, sometimes months. And I think over the past few years, the majority of the time has been very internal. And I think just having a devotion to a relationship with self, and not coming from like a self-indulgent place, but just really wanting to understand the mechanism of how it works down here. And that comes through all sorts of different ways, right? It's like when we have a relationship, regardless if it's romantic or not, but any kind of relationship with other people is going to constantly bring you in situations where something is going to be triggered, good or bad. So to seek out community or to attract community that can also hold you accountable in a loving way, and where you are inspired by the people around you to step up your own game and to witness other people that have maybe already are in the next stage of that embodiment. And so I think when the prayer is there and when the desire is there, and I know you know this from your experience as well, then I feel like the surrounding just comes in to support you in that prayer. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, You are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's what they say. And
Right.
that's actually been on in my field a lot lately is, in starting this podcast and thinking about where do I want to be in 5 years. I'm really, really consciously choosing who I spend time with, who I give energy to, because it is so true. If you sit around with people that are happy just sitting around and watching TV all day, you're going to fall into that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're around people who are constantly trying to grow and better themselves and contribute to the world, you're going to be inspired to do that. We're such creatures of habit. Um, yeah. And then to your point of when you do put that intention out there, that prayer out there, the universe responds. The universe responds no matter what you're putting out there. So
Right.
to be conscious of what we put out there is very important.
Yeah.
And then you're on the right path because it all just starts to fall into place. The teacher comes, the lesson comes, everything you need is right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I love that because it also immediately reflects back to you that the power that you hold, like just what you're saying is like everything that's in our being is constantly sending out radio waves that are crafting and creating what we receive and what we get to see reflected back to us. So I think in noticing like, oh, whoa, I have this thing that I'm aware of, and all of a sudden this person comes into my life and they have that tool in their pocket, and now so you can already start to see how it starts shaping for you, and that's so beautiful. I love that.
How do you trust that in your journey? How have you come to be more in the flow of life and to just go with it? And
Mm-hmm.
did you ever have any adversity to it? Because since I've known you, you've been in the flow, but I've only known you a few years. So,
Right. I think I was definitely born in the flow. I've had just magical alignments as far as I can remember, and always have had a really strong connection with spirit. However, when I hit my teens, it started intimidating me because I didn't really understand it. Now, I was in a household where it was very welcome. But I think because I didn't have any peers that were having similar experiences, it just kind of started freaking me out when I would go to high school, and would have like premonitions, just like little things from the day, but then they would actually happen. And I started feeling very isolated because of magical things happening, and just lots of like divine alignments actually started making me uncomfortable. And so I I think I made an internal, very definitely not conscious, but an internal prayer to like, please make that stop. Like, please just let me be a normal teenager. Like, I want to have friends. I want to be in this space. And it stopped. Everything stopped. And I was so happy. I had no more weird dreams about space, and no more, definitely still sensitive, but and empathic, but it took a different shape, and it very much disconnected me from that core of being conscious of being with spirit. I think the magic alignments always continued. I've always had just really anything that I need come onto my path quite instantly, to like the joke of my family, like houses being just basically gifted. I had cars given to me when I need just like bigger life things would always just like show up like that. But I was definitely I went through a long period from like, I would say like 15 to 20. Okay, so maybe 5 years where I was really hardcore believing that if you're a spiritual person, you're going to be alone. You're going to be either crazy or going to be alone. Because we had the spiritual center at my house when I grew up, and there was lots of people with dysfunctional personalities that would show up. Definitely not only, but I think they imprinted me with this sense of like, whoa, okay, the spiritual community is, you know, just a bunch of wackos basically, and I don't want that. So I think spirit gave me a break for like 5 or 6 years, and I moved to Thailand when I was 20, and it just started creeping back in. Like I think my whole team was like, okay, we've given her long enough. Like start bringing in the signs, and just being around a prayerful people, like the Thai people are. You know, they have a strong Buddhist influence, and I was living next to a monastery that was the forest monastery. It had the forest monks, so these epic, like huge forests with rainbow eucalyptus, and just saw the monks in the morning, every morning, going out and doing their prayer. And so it started bringing back these memories in my, I would really say my body, of feeling how I felt when I was a kid, and we would go to India with my family, and just having this profound sense of belonging and happiness and ease and just being. And so it started like, oh, what happened to that feeling? Like I was definitely just like happy in my life, but that cellular remembrance of something bigger, something greater, something more connected, kind of started coming back then. And it took me on a few years, probably like 4 years of feeling really lonely because of that. So I think I had manifested my own worst nightmare by having this belief that when you're a spiritual being, you're going to be alone. And I felt completely isolated. I was looking for people that I could talk to that were of my age, that were having the same experiences, and I just couldn't find a single person. I know it sounds crazy because there's so many people in the world, but it was not happening. And I remember sitting in Colorado where I was living at the time and exhausted. Like I was there for 3 years, and I would go to Boulder every week because that's where the spiritual people are supposed to be. And I just like, what's happening?
Where are my people?
Where are my people? It's going crazy. And I built this huge altar in my room, and I was getting up every morning and doing my meditations and doing my prayers and doing my yoga and doing my raw food, and just like was so good and disciplined with myself, but so lonely in it. And I remember this kind of like a breaking point in my heart of like, shit, like maybe this really is true. Like maybe it's just going to be a lonely life for me. And I had a dream about Hawaii. And I don't remember the dream itself, but I remember waking up with this thing in my heart, like I need to get on a plane now. And long story short, I got on the plane, and my friend who I was staying with at the time, his mom was managing the new Vipassana center that they built, and the training was starting the next day, and they had one spot open for the women because somebody was sick. And so that's how I ended up in the Vipassana retreat, and had 10 days of absolute game changer experience, and felt like all of those layers that I'm sure so many people can relate to, of just having built up so much safety net around myself and around my true being, just to try to function in a society that is not conducive to living in a sensitive way and being empathic. And like, you have to be kind of hard to make it out there. So I felt all of that fall away. And I remember the moment where I felt like, oh shit, this is either going to like crack me open into something amazing, or it's actually going to send me into like a crazy house. And because it's so real.
Totally. It's a thin line.
Yes. And anyways, I can make this a very long story, but I'll keep it short. After the retreat, everybody was talking and yelling, and they were so happy to hear their own voice. And all I thought was, I don't ever want to talk again. Like, I'm so happy in this silence. I'm so happy by myself. I'm going to go and try to get away and sleep under the stars for a few nights. And I got to a place where I was sure there wasn't going to be anybody. And lo and behold, there was a whole group of wilds, tattooed, dreadlocked, half naked hippies dancing around a fire, eating plant medicines. And I put my little hammock up on the other side of the beach, determined to do my solo journey. And I'm laying in my hammock and I hear them singing, and they're singing all the songs from my youth in India, like all these kirtans and bhajans that I hadn't heard since I was like, I don't know, 14, 15. And one after the other, after the other, after the other. I'm like, what is going on? I've never heard these songs anywhere else. So I had to get up, obviously, and I went over and I tried to open my mouth to ask something, and I lost my voice, even though I hadn't said anything in 10 days. And so I ended up spending the night with these people, just witnessing these wildcats that were my age and singing songs that I knew, but were completely embodied in freedom and joy and just out there in the world, like living how I felt I wanted to, but had never actually seen a functioning example of that, of somebody of my age. And so these people ended up becoming my best friends to this day. You know Daniela. So I met her that night, and I ended up caravanning with them for 4 months, and we lived on the beach, and they introduced me to ayahuasca, and we just went into it. I think God just gave me this epic container that was so pure and so raw and so vibrant of like, this is possible. Like, this is a reality that's out there being lived by people who are your friends. And this is an option for you. And it's not just about being a hippie or not being a hippie, but it just broke in me the conditioning of what I thought was going to be my life, because I didn't fit in this culture that I knew, but I also had never seen another one that was attractive for me. So that was that moment. And I think from then on, obviously then life really starts happening, because then you have to really take care of leaving the old pieces behind in a graceful way, because that also means relationships and living and working and all these things that just fell out of resonance really in a moment's time. And I feel like the doors to this way of living that we're talking about just opened up for me. And then Bali came and Mexico came, and I discovered that there's a whole world out there of beings that are incredible and like walking the path and are joyous and are young and are figuring things out, but are also rooted in like this real remembrance. And yeah, it's an interesting journey, because it's coming home to yourself over and over and over and over again, and just coming into this way that I always knew was there. But then I actually got to live it and experience it. And with all of that, life is still life is still life. Like, there's still the ups and the downs and the things, but everything is has come now through a lens of purpose. Like, this is for something. Even if something happens that upsets me, there's always now a deep rooted knowing that this is just something I need to learn. This is for me. It's not going to be comfortable, but it's all right, because A, I know I'm strong enough to get through it. B, I know this is for my benefit. Like, this situation has been constructed for my benefit. So it's altered my being into what I remembered as a child feeling, like, just to come back to the original question, like that being in the flow and that being connected to spirit, which is my nature and which I was able to fully be when I was a kid. But now to do that with an adult mind and to make a conscious choice that, oh, this is actually how I want to live my life. And this is also my purpose in a way, is to fully come into the most authentic version of myself, because only if I really embody it, only then can I send out that frequency to my family and to my community that can help uplift and help others also to come deeper into their authenticity, as others have done for me.
Yeah, you invite others to follow.
Yeah.
Or not to follow, but to join.
Yeah, exactly. To just step into your own journey, because I relate to that loneliness, and I see it in people. There's this like want for, people know there's something more, but they're scared because it's the unknown, right? Because most of us are not raised with examples of, sure, go on, make your own choices and see how it feels. Now, I've been very blessed to have a mom who was like, if you don't want to go to school, like, what do you want to do? So I feel like all these little different parts of human experience and of life just kind of always start coming together in a way that you've had all the tools all along. Like, they've been secretly with you and planted seeds like all throughout your life. And it's just like tapping into learning to see those, and maybe learning to see the things that your parents taught you in a different way, and start tapping into like gratitude of, sometimes it's a reverse lesson, sometimes we get examples of what you don't want, but then give thanks for that, because that has given you clarity. So you know what I mean? Like, everything just starts shifting into purpose and into meaningfulness. And that makes life a lot more rich and exciting.
Yes, when you can be in your purpose and you can be connected and be contributing. I find personally, like, if I'm contributing, I feel great about life. If I'm not, and I'm kind of, in a hermit phase and withdrawing, it just makes me more disconnected. And that's not to say that I don't need time to myself, because I think that that's very important. And I am a true introvert. I need that space. But in the big picture, like, when we can contribute to the greater good, it only benefits every single being on this earth.
Yeah. Like creating this podcast.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm trusting that it's gonna, whoever needs to hear it's gonna hear it. And yeah, it feels really good. This is like passion project for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for opening this space. And I love what you shared with me initially when we talked beforehand, of just creating a space for people to tell their stories, because relatability is key. I think that's really one of the keys. Like, I heard somewhere that 70% of people in the Western world die from loneliness. Like, number one cause of death is loneliness. And when I heard that, it might have been in a documentary, Alive Inside, which was, if somebody hasn't seen it, and you want to tap into the real biochemical magic of music, it's incredible. It might have been in that documentary. And anyways, it just hit me like, whoa, we're all here together. Like, truly, every single person has a story. Every single person has something of value to share. And maybe from somebody has to start the chain of becoming vulnerable and opening up. And you're creating with this podcast a space for people to experience that for themselves, either through being on here with you or through listening. And I think it's one of the most valuable things we can do in this time, is to create these gateways of connection with one another. So thank you.
Thank you for that reflection. That's, you embodied what my intention is. So. I would love to transition and speak about how you found music, how that came into your field, into your journey, and what your path has been with that.
Okay.
If you're cool with that, or we can talk about something else.
No, I'm super cool with it. I'm laughing because I love all the stories. It was definitely a story. Music, wow. I have danced my whole life. I've done theater my whole life. And my sister loved to sing, and my best friend loved to sing. And a part of my personality that I'm challenging at these days in my life, but something that I had really strong as a kid was, if you want to do something, then I'm not even going to try it, because I want you to have all the space to explore that. So in my sister wanting to sing and my best friend wanting to sing, there was no way that I was going to sing. And so it never even occurred to me that I was a musical being in any way, shape, or form. To the point of right before music found me, because it came knocking at my door really quite physically. I remember a bunch of my colleagues, we were working in Malaysia, and all the girls were going to the beach to sing together. And I didn't go. I was the only one who didn't go, because I'm like, I don't sing. I don't even really enjoy that. Like, I'm going to be over here doing whatever I was doing. So that's how much I wasn't singing. And yeah, wow, I feel like music was a force that like shattered my reality to let itself in. Like it needed that big of a container. So I was in a beautiful relationship. I had my absolute dream job. I was on this yummy path, and through a series of decisions and interesting happenings, that all exploded and was gone. And I found myself in Thailand, just in this like 20-year-old complete, what just happened? Just completely stunned, like, wait, everything was in place, and now everything is out of place. Like no house, no job, no beloved, just like everything fell away.
The universe
And
told you it was time to make a change.
I guess, but I didn't know that at the time. It was just like, what the hell? And my brother came to Thailand, and he was 17 at the time. And he was like, I'm going to go out and have a drink. And I stayed in that little hostel where we were staying. And he called me and he's like, Reg, I'm at this bar across the street, and there's a guy playing music. I think you'd really like it. Why don't you come over and have a drink with me? And I'm like, I don't want to. He's like, come on, I think you really like it. It's nice music. I'm like, all right. And I've been traveling for a long time. I didn't have any clean clothes. So I'm standing on the sidewalk looking at the other side of the street where my brother is, looking at the music. And I call him and I said, I'm not coming in. Like, that is way too fancy. I look like shit. Like, I cannot. He's like, just freaking what? Come on, won't you? Okay, so I went over. I'm sitting down with my brother. This guy is playing music. He's so entertaining and wonderful. And he takes a break from the music and he comes over and he talks with he goes to every little table and does the whole like, hey, thanks for coming, schmago bigo. And he comes over to my brother and he's like, hi, what's your name? Dane. Oh, and what's your name? Reggie. Rachel? No, Reggie. Oh, Reggie. Okay, nice to meet you. And we have a conversation, and he's just this wonderful, lovely person. And he's like, oh, if you guys, I can come back tomorrow and I can show you guys all the vegetarian restaurants if you're new in town. And so enter Richie Castro, which ended up being my partner for 7 years. And so he was a full-on musician, had been traveling the world for 20 years with his guitar, just making music wherever he could. And he was a storyteller and amazing Mexican-American, Native American creature who was just this joyful embodiment of the arts. And we started hanging out, and he had just written a children's album, storytelling music children's album. And one day we're talking, he's like, I think you should sing. I'm like, I don't think so. He's like, no, I think you should sing. Like, what songs do you like? And I'm like, oh, I don't know any songs. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I have one song and I need a girl vocal for it. And why don't you just learn it? And if you like it, then you come into the studio and you sing it. And so he gave me the words and he sent me the song, and I'm sitting in my little student apartment in the middle of Thailand by myself going, well, what am I getting myself into? I can't even sing. And anyways, I learned the song, and the next day he came over and I sang it for him, and he said, okay, perfect. So why don't you come and do the whole album with me? We're going to be in the studio every day. And actually, why don't you join me in the band? Like, I'm performing 5 nights a week. You could do backups. And so I went from no music. I didn't have anything else to do. So I'm like, all right, just say yes. Like, this was knocking at my door so clearly. So I said yes. I love performing. That has to be said. So I was like, oh, it'd be fun to be on stage again. And so I just got like immersed into being on stage with him 5 nights a week, being in the studio for 9 months, recording an album with incredible musicians. So I just fell like into, and I was living in Chiang Mai, which at the time had a huge expat community with all these like old school, wonderful musicians. And so music just grabbed me, and I was there for a little over a year. And that was it. I just fell so deeply in love with the fun of music and how it was bringing everyone together. And I loved singing. I loved it. I loved it, even though I don't really know if it sounded that good at the beginning, but I just loved how it made me feel. And yeah, it just took hold of me. And so I think because of the blessing of having Richie in my life, and he just kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me to where I needed to be, besides all my reservations and insecurities. And he really showed up as like an angel in my life to escort me into my destiny. And that, I mean, here I am today. So now that's been 11 years, coming on the 12th this year. And I can't even imagine that music wasn't there at some point. I feel like it's my breath, my lifeline, and my connection to spirit. So it just, yeah, it came and grabbed a hold of me.
Yeah, there was no denying that that was your next step for sure.
But if you would have told me at any point before my 20th that I would become a musician, I would have said, haha, no way. It took me, honestly, maybe like 6 years before I even dared say that I was a musician, even though I was making music full time at that point for 6 years. Wow, just seemed like completely unreal to me.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure other people saw you as a musician and referred to you as a musician, but you hadn't accepted that piece of your identity yet.
Yeah, it just felt like a title I didn't deserve. I kept having this narrative of like, well, you know, I just stumbled into this. Like, I felt like I was given something that I didn't really, I don't know if deserve is the right word, but it's kind of like, almost like I got somebody else's lottery ticket and I accidentally won. And it's so great, but also like, I don't really know if this belongs to me. And if I'm gonna have to give it back at some point, which I might. But I mean, now I'm definitely like, okay, this is, at least for now, what's happening full on. But yeah, it was a surprise.
Sometimes those are the best moments when you just allow whatever's coming through to come through and happen.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I think that's also where you know that this is what's up. Like, this is what's meant to be. It didn't come from any place of, like, there was no preconceived ambition fused into it, which also has its purpose and its place. But it was just like, okay, this is what you're here to do. Like, go do it.
When did you have that actual feeling within you that this is part of your purpose? At what point in the journey with music?
I think it's still coming in different depths. I think one of the first moments that went beyond just, oh, this is something that I really love and really enjoy was we started a musical theater company for children called History Hunter. And we were working a lot with schools and summer programs and after school programs and assembly programs. And I remember just like singing with these kids and having 600 little creatures like bust up laughing and singing with me. And some magic is there, like some real magic is in that energy. And I remember this like little flickering thing inside of my heart of like, oh, this is where I want to be. So that became like more of a conscious like, oh, if this is where I want to be, then I reckon this is where I'm supposed to be. And I think just that feeling kept deepening through having experiences with the medicine of the music. So we were playing once a month in a care home, and just seeing people who really didn't have that much in their lives because they're just in that home all day, every day. And some had serious illnesses and some were just really old and different handicaps. We had a lady that every time I saw her, she kept losing a limb, like just like real, almost in like, I don't want to say the tragedy of life, but just a very specific way of living. And we would come in and sing Elvis for these people and like oldies and, you know, just music that they love and that they related to. And I remember at one point we were singing I Can't Help Falling in Love with You by Elvis, and everyone was singing along on the top of their lungs in all different keys and all different rhythms. And I just started crying, and I just felt this just the importance of music. Like, I think it just really hit me like, wow, it doesn't even have to be anything supersonic, frequency 5,432 hertz minute. Like, all this stuff is amazing, but just the super simple essence that you can connect and touch and move and bring people home to a place of joy or give them a little bit of ease in this life through just singing a song. It just, I think it just hit me as like wow, thank you for this gift. Like, thank you for placing me in a position where I get to just have fun with my best friend, and we get to bring either all these kids along with us and give them a seed of joy, or we get to sing for these people that didn't have that moment of joy before. We would go in. There was a guy in the hospital or in the care home. His name was Mike, and he had fallen off a ladder 13 years earlier with a 6-month-old baby that he just had. The baby didn't fall, but he fell, and he got completely paralyzed and he could hardly blink. So he'd been in that bed in that care home for 13 years, and he used to be a musician. And so at some point, one of the head nurses came over and she was like, do you want to maybe go and play for Mike because he can't come out of the room? And so we went in, and Richie was standing right where Mike's eyes were with the guitar because he used to be a guitar player. And we started singing, I don't know, like some old like rock and rolling stuff. And the nurses were there with us, and Mike started crying, and what can only kind of be described as maybe like a smile, and his eyes started like going up and down, and the nurses all started crying because they had never seen that much activity in him physically. And the whole room just filled with like joy and like something that came alive. And I've had the honor and the pleasure to have had several experiences like that where it just, even if it wouldn't have been my thing before, like how can I step away from something that can do that? So I think that's just been a deepening sense of gratitude for receiving music as something that I get to bring to spaces, and feeling the responsibility in a really joyful and healthy sense of like, wow, if I can, then I'm going to. Like, this is something special and something beautiful and something unexpected for me to experience, but here I am. So, okay, I'm all in.
I got chills when you were telling those stories. I felt it. I felt the
Mhm.
magic.
Yeah, powerful. And it's cool because I grew up with my mom, was reading to, we have a care home here close to our home, and she would go every Friday for 10 years and read stories to, it's a care home for blind, elderly, disabled people. So it's a quite specific group. And I remember going with her and just feeling these moments that are so far from my bed. Like that life that these people live is so far from my young, healthy body, from like middle class white background, just like a very privileged, free existence that I've gotten to live. And through having had the opportunity to spend time around, people that are having a very different experience, but then through music or through connection, right? Through storytelling, or like my mom reading these books or whatever it is. In my case, it's music, being able to completely connect and to completely find the joy of life together, where maybe external circumstances wouldn't necessarily invoke that. And then by bringing a song, just bringing a guitar, or even not a guitar, just singing together and sitting, it's just so simple, but so powerful.
I have a special request.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you honor us by sharing a song?
Sure. Yes.
Mm.
Let me take this here guitar. So I went to the ocean today, and I was reminded of this song that I will record this year. It's called "Return to the Mother." And when I was living in Mexico, one of my friends was going through some turmoil, and I went to the ocean to just ask for some guidance for him and pray. And I heard this song, and it's been a very sweet medicine that I've been playing for myself a lot, just to like bring me back home. So it's called "Return to the Mother." Return to the mother, get into the water where it all began. Breathe and remember, child of the heavens, you are peaceful. When the fires blaze within you, and they burn all that you've been, remember to take a step back and be still. And soon you will return to the mother, get into the water where it all began. Breathe and remember, child of the heavens, you are peaceful then. And you are peaceful now. You are peaceful now. Light short version.
There's so much love in your offerings. Whenever you sing, there's so much joy and so much love. Thank you so much for sharing with me and with the audience.
Thank you. My super pleasure. Thanks for asking. And I'm happy to be able to.
I have a few questions I like to close every podcast with.
Okay.
So, if you could tell every human on the planet one thing, what would it be?
Ooh,
Uh-huh.
One thing. Keep it short, Reggie. All right. Just to be kind. Come on, folks. Let's just be kind. Be kind. That's it. The end.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is your current life motto or mantra?
Oh, can it be the same?
Of course. It can be whatever's true.
Yeah, I don't think that's currently what I'm working with. Well, okay, here it is. If all is love, there's nothing to be forgiven. That's what I've been working with. If all is love, there's nothing to be forgiven.
It's a powerful statement.
Medicine. It's not mine. I think it comes from a oracle deck where they had the Mother Mary card, and that's what I think it's Doreen Virtue Goddess deck. It has Mother Mary in it, and it said that if all's love, there's nothing to be forgiven, and I feel like that's been really powerful for me this year, this past 2020 roller coaster year, and yeah, that's what I'm working with right now.
Final question, because I know people are going to want to connect with you and hear more of your music. How do they do that?
Just give me a call, sweetheart. Anything Riverbear Medicine, 2 words, Riverbear Medicine on Spotify, riverbearmedicine.com, Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram, and I'm currently in the workings of updating the website and getting all the offerings out there. But if you want to connect one-on-one, I offer sessions, and also there's obviously music on Spotify and on Bandcamp and SoundCloud. So really anywhere that you can think to type in Riverbear Medicine, you're going to find me, and I'd love to connect.
Yay! Connect with her, listen to her music. It's amazing.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you so much for being here, Reggie. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in. Until next time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to this episode number 4 of Wise Human with Reggie Riverbear. How incredible is her voice? Oh my goodness. It takes me somewhere else. It makes me feel so loved, just wrapped in light. I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you found wisdom in this podcast, let us know. Both Reggie and I are most active on Instagram, so take a screenshot of the podcast or one of the postings and share on your stories what you found interesting or intriguing in this episode, what you learned, what you related to, and tag both Reggie and I. I will put our Instagram handles in the description and we'll reshare. It'll be great. We can start a conversation. I'm so curious to know what you took from this episode. Share it with your friends, your family, your community. Leave a review, 5 stars, comments, like it. What this does is it allows the podcast, it helps the podcast to spread further and wider. If you enjoyed it, I have no doubt somebody else is going to as well. I hope you are having a wonderful day, night, evening, wherever you are, whatever time it is. I hope life is good. And if it's not, remember, nothing is permanent. Until next time, my loves.